Good morning. Welcome to Zwingli United Church of Christ, and glad you're here this day. I invite you to fill out the welcome sheets that are at the end of your row and pass those along to your neighbor. I'd also like to welcome any visitors who are here with us this morning, and especially would like to welcome the Reverend Carl Jones, who is the disaster coordinator for the Pennsylvania Southeast Conference, and will be offering a class that you'll hear about in announcements a little later today. So glad to have you with us, Carl. Please greet each other and visitors warmly today, and also hopefully we'll all gather together after the service for a time of fellowship and getting to know one another a little better. So now is the time for prayer requests, and I do have a few prayer concerns to share with you this morning. One is, of course, we've been hearing over the past week about a number of shootings once again. And so let us please keep in prayer those victims as well as their families and the communities where these shootings happen, and all of the violence that seems to be happening and exploding around the world. We need to be in prayer and action in order to try to do what we can in the midst of that and be God's hands and feet and voice in the midst of all of this. For those who are able, please stand for the call to worship. Be in awe of God, and you will find wisdom, knowledge, and insight.
Together to worship God, who made the entire universe.
Turn to Jesus, who gives us guidance, hope, and assurance.
Follow God, who knows our innermost thoughts and dreams.
Seek God's ways for your life, and not the ways of the world.
God's ways are justice, mercy, and love.
Come, let us worship God, who leads us into life.
Let us pray. God of wisdom and grace, you call us to be servants to all and to welcome strangers and children in your name. You call us to be women and men of courage and to do what is right and worthy without thought of reward. Help us to delight in your word and to live in your peace, that we may be known as your people. Amen. Let us reflect upon our week of life, recognizing the ways that we fall short. Let us confess together. Loving God, we humbly ask that you grant us mercy. When we seek after the wealth of this world, forgive our selfish striving. When we yearn for the power that proves our pride, forgive our selfish dreams. When we embark on roads that lead to destruction and despair, guide us on Christ's path of life. Loving God, grant us your mercy, that we may turn and show mercy and compassion to all who need, and so grant us Drawing near to Christ, we discover that Christ has drawn near to us. We are all God's children, bathed in the waters of righteousness, forgiven and welcomed new. Amen. Wanting to go home with her on a regular basis. Okay, kids. Right. In a little while, we're going to hear a scripture lesson that talks about the disciples trying to decide who among them was most important. Who do you think was the most important disciple? Do you know who the disciples were? Well, that's fine. Because you know what? Jesus said, none of you. Who do you think is the most important person here at Zwingli? There are a lot of important people out there, aren't there? I mean, they do a lot. Who do you think is most important? Tell you what, go out and find somebody that you think is really important here at this church. Do it real quick, okay? And have them stand up, okay? Go find somebody. Your parents, you pass by some really important people up here, you know. So back this way. Nobody's standing yet. Oh, there's somebody standing. Okay, there's somebody standing. Oh, there's somebody standing. Your parents are important. You're right. Who else is important? How about David? David's important, right? Because he plays. How about the other musicians? They're important, right? Lisa, where's Lisa? Lisa's important. Yeah. She's important, you're right. Yeah, who else is important? Okay, that's great. Come on back up. And if you see somebody else that's important along the way, just ask them to stand up, okay?
Yes, I'm sorry.
They all sat down already. All right, so what do you think? Did anybody agree with who all was important out there? Who's important? Lisa? Yeah, those are really important people, but guess what? None of them are most important. Well, God, yes. God is very important. Absolutely. But it's hard for us to reach out and say, God, stand up now, right? Except for the fact that there's a part of God in each and every one of us. But most especially, you know who Jesus would have had stand up? Not me. Jesus would have said, stand up. The children, you're it. You're it. You're what's most important. He said, receive a child. And if you don't receive a child, bad news, that's not good. Because this is where, you're what it's all about. And you know why that is? You can sit down. We love how children can trust. Old folks get cynical, that's too big a word. Old folks get doubtful, and they question and they think they start to know it all. And we all need to embrace how trusting you all are and how accepting you are of God's love and how much you can let God be part of your life. So you're it, guys. You're the big shots. You're the most important folks from what God says, what Jesus told us was important. So even when we're picking on our siblings, we're still important to God. And I want you all to remember that. And even though they're important, no, they might have lots of responsibilities, lots of things they have to do, and they do important things, but you are what God really cares about most. And we all care about you all too. So let's pray. Thank you, God, for the love you have for these children, for reminding us that it's all about caring for them and sharing your love with them and raising them to love and serve you. Be with each of these children throughout their week. May they always know how much they are loved and keep them growing in their faith. In Christ's name, amen. For our epistle lesson this morning, we are reading from the book of James, from verses from chapter 3, from 4. Who is wise and understanding among you? Show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness, born of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not be boastful and false to the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, devilish. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there will also be disorder and wickedness of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. And a harvest of righteousness is sown in peace for those who make peace. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and he will draw near to you. That ends our first lesson.
Our gospel lesson this morning is found in the gospel according to Mark, the 9th chapter, beginning with the 30th verse. They went on from there and passed through Galilee. He did not want anyone to know it, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, "The Son of Man is to be betrayed into human hands, and they will kill him. And 3 days after being killed, he will rise again." But they did not understand what he was saying, and were afraid to ask him. Then they came to Capernaum, and when he was in the house, he asked them, "What were you arguing about on the way?" But they were silent, for on the way they had argued with one another who was the greatest. He sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "Whoever wants to be first must be last of all, and servant of all." Then he took a little child and put it among them, and taking it in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me." May God add a blessing to the reading of God's holy word. Yeah, as the children's message was going on this morning, I was thinking of who's important in the church myself, and I thought of quite a few people here, and I also thought of Pastor Elaine and the choir, and I also thought, who is the most important person in the church? And besides the children, make no mistake about it, it's Lisa Sincerapini. I'll collect the check afterwards, Lisa. But there's a story that I read about, a story that's, I think, true, and a story you've probably heard before. It's about a young woman who wanted to go to college, and her heart sank when she read the question on the application that asked, "Are you a leader?" Being both honest and conscientious, she wrote, "No," and returned the application expecting the worst. To her surprise, she received this letter from the college. It said, "Dear applicant, a study of the application forms reveals that this year our college will have 1,452 new leaders. We are accepting you because we feel it is imperative that they have at least one follower." Yeah. It's not easy to be a follower in our society. We are told over and over again about how important it is for us to be an individual, to seek leadership, to be the greatest, to have the best, to be an innovative entrepreneur or having initiative, to make sure you're out there and everyone can see what you're doing and that you're doing all the right things. All of these things are highly prized in our society. But it's not that these are bad things. They're not bad things. They're actually good things. But Jesus tells us today that these are the kinds of things that can get in the way of being a good follower. And Jesus is looking for good followers. Not passive, blindly obedient followers who sit on the sidelines, who say nothing, do nothing, but followers who will give their lives in service and who will abide or dwell in Jesus so that Jesus can dwell within them. As I thought about our scripture this morning, I was struggling with what really to do with it. And I started seeing some patterns in the scripture, and patterns that we've seen over and over again during the weeks. And this morning, I think, gives us a little bit of instruction about what it means to be a follower of Jesus. One of the things that really came to mind as I was reading through these passages is that sometimes when you read Scripture or when you hear the voice of Jesus telling you to do something, that sometimes you hear things you really don't want to hear or that you can't understand or you have difficulty practicing and that you're not sure that you want to be a part of your lives. There's another story about a man who stumbles into a deep well and plummets 100 feet before grasping onto a spindly root, stopping his fall. His grip grows weaker and weaker, and this desperation grows greater and greater, and he cries up, "Is anybody up there?" He looks up, and all he can see is a circle of sky, and suddenly the clouds in the sky part, and a beam of light shines down on him, and a deep voice thunders out, "I, the Lord, am here. Let go of the root, and I will save you." The man thinks for a moment and then yells back, "Is there anyone else up there?" The disciples were dumbfounded by Jesus' talk about death and suffering and arrest and being raised. It was as if they were in the well yelling up, "Is there anyone else up there?" They were afraid to ask questions. They were so scared. But who could blame them? This was supposed to be the Messiah. They were going to be on top soon. They had the miracle worker right there in their midst. Crowds were flocking to see Jesus. Even they were sent out to preach and to teach and to heal. It was all going just as everyone planned. They could just see what it would be like in the future when Jesus has to go and say the things that he said. Again, for the second time. What Jesus was saying to them in those words was, "Let go, and I will save you." Jesus is saying to each one of us, "Let go of who you want me to be and come and imitate who I am. Let go of your need to control or be the first or to be the greatest and come and follow me." That's not the only hard lesson that Jesus taught. You could probably think of many others, like love your enemies, blessed are the peacemakers, go and sell all that you have and give to the poor. In many places and in many ways, Jesus said to let go. To let go of your anger, to let go of your hatred, to let go of your love for possessions, to let go of all and anything that gets in the way of a deep and abiding relationship with God. Let go, and I will save you. Do we trust enough to be followers in this way? To let go of the very things that we cling to and believe will save us or make us secure, instead of clinging to Jesus? So that's one thing. Sometimes we're going to hear things we really don't want to hear, that we're going to be asked to live lives we're not sure that we can live. But Jesus asks those questions of us anyway. Jesus asks us to do these things anyway, but does not leave us alone and tells us that we are going to have the Holy Spirit, that we're going to have Jesus himself there with us as we take this journey. The second thing that came really clear to me was the passage we've heard over and over again at different places. Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all. And then we're told in Scripture that he took a little child and put it among them. And then taking it up in his arms, he said to them, "Whoever welcomes one child like this welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me welcomes not me, but the one who sent me." This is a further letting go. And Jesus is getting really specific about what we are to do in our lives of faith. As we have heard again and again and again, the Christian faith is not about being first, but is about being servant. And I think this is one of the most difficult teachings of Jesus about being a follower of him, which is why it's good to preach about it and hear about it and hopefully practice it again and again and again. The way of the cross, we learn, we know, is no less confounding and difficult today as it was for those disciples 2,000 years ago. Well, the disciples, just after hearing about Jesus' prediction of his passion and his death, we found them being human, doing what we might actually even do. They weren't discussing what he had just said about his death and his resurrection or those things. They weren't discussing things about being a servant. They were discussing instead about who was going to be the greatest. Just after Jesus had said these things, the disciples, in fear or for whatever reason, had already turned the other way, looking at another direction, looking at another path. Mary Hinkle says that the disciples were like graduate students comparing GRE scores, or like ministers discussing how many they worship each week, like we worship about 430 in those services. Now don't get me wrong, church growth is important. I'd love to have 430 people in 2 services. And academic achievement is noble and can lead to great discovery and knowledge and can certainly help people. But Jesus tells us that these things are of little importance if we do not orient our lives in service to others. By doing things like welcoming the stranger, the alien, the person who is the immigrant, or visiting the sick, or caring for those in need, or advocating for the vulnerable in our society. And we can sit here and make a long list of those who are vulnerable and who have become even more vulnerable in the last few years. To give us a clear illustration of his point, Jesus took the child in his arms. And as the Reverend Dr. Bruce Epperly points out, in Jesus' time, children were often seen as expendable. They were at the lowest rung of the totem pole. They were not like we were last week when we were baptizing the baby and everyone thought he was so cute and so wonderful and we could just think of all the potential for this child. This was not true in Jesus' time. They did not think about the child's potential. They did not think about how warm and cuddly they were. They were expendable, vulnerable, the least in society. Yet Jesus embraces this child as a sign, a symbol of true greatness. A child, not Caesar, not the government leader, not even leaders within the church, were chosen for Jesus to pick up and show to others the heart of God. The way we treat children in our society, or the most vulnerable in our society, says something about whether we are followers of Jesus and how we serve others. Hard lessons. The third thing that I noticed was to make sure that your life and priorities are shaped not by the world, but by the wisdom that comes from God. Remember what James said in his letter? Show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness, born of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not be boastful and false to the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, devilish. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there will also be disorder and wickedness of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without a trace of partiality or hypocrisy. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Draw near to God, and God will draw near to you. As I thought about this, I realized that my job as a preacher is multifaceted. But what I can basically say about preaching is that I hope to make clear, or to help to make clear, the Scripture and what the Scripture is saying, especially when it is hard to understand, or it's confusing, or it's just hard to hear. I also try to give examples or use other ways to help us make a connection between passages written thousands of years ago and our faith today. I also believe, also believe about sermons is that you can hear sermons in 2 or 3 different ways in any particular worship service. You can hear it through the hymns or the songs or what the choir sang this morning. You can hear it through the children's message. And I think we heard a great sermon in the children's message today. We could hear it through the prayers or the liturgy, but we got to pay attention. We really have to not just read the words on the page, but see the words on the page and make them a part of who we are. And realize that we're saying these prayers together as a community of faith. That this is one of the ways in which we connect to God. Maybe, sometimes, there's something that might be said from this pulpit that might make a difference to you. We do all of these things because Scripture is indeed sometimes hard to understand. And we want to do all of these things so we can make sense of Scripture, that we can make sense of our faith. Sometimes the passage, though, is so clear that it essentially preaches itself. That it doesn't actually need me to say anything, or Pastor Elaine to say anything, or the choir to sing anything, or for us to hear it in the prayers or the liturgy. It is so clear that it preaches itself. The reading from James is one that preaches itself. It is really clear. My first reaction to reading the passage from James was to have all of you just sit in the beginning and read it to yourself. And when you were finished, to read it again. And then when you were finished, to read it again. And to pray that the words might seep deeply into your heart, into your soul. In fact, I would encourage you during this week to read the passage from James and also the passage from the Gospel, to read it over and over again each day and pray with those scriptures this week so that you can hear clearly what God might be saying to you. Because I think that these are really great scripture, clear passages about how we are to shape our lives as Christians, as followers of Christ, as God's servants in the world. And if you have any questions after you read any of these, let's talk about it. Let's not be like those disciples of long ago who stayed silent. But let us ask the questions. Let us talk with one another. Let us discuss what it means to be a Christian in the world. And so I'm going to leave you not with my words, but again, these words from James. Show by your good life that your works are done with gentleness, born of wisdom. But if you have bitter envy and selfish ambition in your hearts, do not be boastful and false to the truth. Such wisdom does not come down from above, but is earthly, unspiritual, devilish. For where there is envy and selfish ambition, there will also be disorder and wickedness of every kind. But the wisdom from above is first pure, then peaceable, gentle, willing to yield, full of mercy and good fruits, without trace of partiality or hypocrisy. Submit yourselves, therefore, to God. Resist the devil, and the devil will flee from you. Draw near to God, and God will indeed